I would like to start really quickly with some basic introduction. So first of all, welcome. And today's topic of FastFor webinar is Bank Reconciliation SuiteApp. And in my agenda today is to talk about how you can look at bank reconciliation in a more efficient and faster way than the standard NetSuite bank reconciliation. And I thought to divide our today's agenda into a couple of points. So first of all, I would like to talk about FastFor as a company, but not from the side of NetSuite implementation, but rather us as a member of a Suite Cloud Developer Network. So our applications that we develop that are native part of NetSuite, helping customers globally to achieve more automation in their processes. I will then talk about the bank reconciliation tool itself. So why did we start with the development in the first place? What are the key differences between standard BankRec and FastFor bank reconciliation app? And I will show you in my demo account as well. This will take the most part of our today's webinar. After the demonstration, I will talk about implementation, how long does it take, what sessions are included, and of course, we can talk about the pricing structure. In the remaining time, before we close the webinar, we can have a look at some of your questions. We have enabled a Q&A chat for you today. My colleague Anna on the call will be helping me to answer your questions during the call. And in the remaining time, we will pick up a couple of those interesting ones that we can also cover live. That would be the agenda for today. So I suggest that we just start. And my first topic is to talk about FastFor. So some of you on the call already did some research about who we are. And as I promised, I'm not going to talk about our implementations in the Benelux region, where we are the biggest partner of NetSuite. Our primary focus today are the Suite apps. So the products we developed are called Suite apps that are add-ons to standard NetSuite platform, and they are native to NetSuite, meaning there is no external integration, there's no separate website like fastfor.com. You would be logging. Users that have Suite apps installed stay 100% of the time in NetSuite. We have deployed our solution in more than 750 customers globally. And our applications, I have the full set on the screen. So you see that Scan and Capture is the one focusing on automation of AP processes. Credit card import helps with processing of credit card statements. And SFTP is a secure way of sending files in and out from NetSuite. All of these are basically developed based on our customer needs and the feedback. So one thing you will notice about our applications that these are managed bundles. So any new release, you as a customer also benefit from those, and they will be automatically pushed into your accounts without a need of any additional setup from your end. So the question is, what makes FastFor bank reconciliation different from the standard NetSuite bank reconciliation? And the answer is that the standard way of reconciling has simply a different logic built in. So in order to achieve bank reconciliation with NetSuite, you need to have all your transactions in the system already, meaning that if I have an incoming payment from customer, I would first need to go to NetSuite in order to allocate that invoice and create that particular customer payment transaction. Only then I can bring in my statement from the bank and start the reconciliation process. So we noticed that this is oftentimes very much a manual work, no fun for the user, and simply very much open to errors, especially in case that you have tons and tons of transactions on a monthly basis. This leads to the fact that most of our customers they are hesitant to have reconciliation done on a more automated manner, maybe daily. And by the time they realize that FastFor way is more efficient, they will switch from monthly reconciliation to daily one. So our Suite app has been developed to focus on bank transaction automation and reconciliation at the same time. So in the scenario I just gave you about that incoming payment on the bank side, and you having to create those transactions, we take that manual step from you, and we can do that automatically. So our process basically starts with the import itself, where we can allocate that invoice and create the customer payment immediately for you. So I was speaking about our customers, and really, if you look at the couple of names that I chose for you today, these are big companies of different sizes, coming from different industries, located globally. And the overall message they all share is that the bank reconciliation became an automated process where the system is doing the matching for them. And it just leads to the fact that the reconciliation and the actual balances can be in NetSuite, populated more often than usual. So from end user perspective, the question is, what do I have to do in order to use Fast4 Bank Rec? How does this work? How does it differ from the standard way? So the first step in order to achieve the bank reconciliation start with the statement itself. And you can basically import any type of international recognized formats such as MT940, CAMP053, CAMP054. CSV should be always available. You can do so for bank accounts of different currencies, and meaning not only bank accounts, but also we could do that for credit card statements, or that might be interesting for some of you, payment gateways as well. So when I say payment gateways, I mean additional providers such as Stripe statements, PayPal statements, TransferWise statements, where you basically do the reconciliation on two levels. The first level is the bank itself, and the other level is the payment provider's statement. So after the statement is in NetSuite, what happens is that we create what we call bank statement lines out of it. So no need for any split screen mode where you would be ticking any boxes. The system is immediately telling you whether the match was successful or not. On the lines where the match wasn't successful for reason of being a sort of mismatch on amounts, or there's a lack of information on the line telling us which transaction to link to, users can quickly make the call themselves and make any adjustments. So they can apply custom matching rule on a specific line, or they can decide to use payment different reasons for any type of underpayment or overpayment happening on the statement. So this leads to the fact that you see everything in one screen, immediately linked and matched, and all your statements should be reconciled within a couple of minutes. The best way to demonstrate this is, of course, the demo itself. So I will now switch my environment, and I'm going to go into my NetSuite, and I will start with a simple bank statement upload, and I will show you a couple of scenarios. Some of them will be the happy path, where everything has worked out as expected, and we will go into more complicated scenarios where we have some exceptions to manage. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Perfect. So in my NetSuite environment, one thing you will notice that I'm not going to use the standard way of reconciliation like most of you are used to. So I'm not going through the bank and reconcile bank statement. That is the manual comparison, the old way of how NetSuite works. There is also the new functionality of match bank data. So I'm not using this path at all. Instead, when the bundle is installed, you will use a new menu path for bank reconciliation, and I will start my process with the import itself. On this page, you will see that we can do what we call a single import. So I have one bank account in my chart of accounts and an appropriate statement for it. Or what you can have configured is a multiple import type of import. In this case, it's usually very handy in case you have thousands and thousands of lines of transactions and you would like to cut down the statement by certain volume, like 300, 500. Or this could be especially useful if you have multiple bank accounts with the same bank and you would receive just one statement. So I'm going to just go into my typical bank statement that I use, where I have my scenarios. And we spoke about the fact that we can use multiple statement formats. In this case, I'm using a CSV in the demo account, but it will highly depend on what your bank can provide to you. So all those formats that I mentioned to you are supported out of the box. So the first thing you will notice is that my statement is now created as a record in NetSuite in this way. So the first is the fact that it's linked to that chart of account account. Here you will see the currency of the statement and all those transactions. So this is, from a particular week, but in your case could be just a daily statement. As for the bank balances, so during the implementation, we would ask you to populate the bank start balance at the early beginning to tell us the historic data, because we don't have that. And post that, we will always pick up the chronologically from where you indicated is the start balance. The overall idea of this whole process that we are trying to achieve is to have an actual zero difference between what is my value in bank inside NetSuite and what is in the bank in the real world. Having said that I would like to achieve zero difference, that doesn't mean that the system will not allow me to save. I can, in fact, have a couple of lines left out that can be later on investigated. And the nicest thing about that is that later on my home dashboard, I can add a reminder to myself about any bank statements with some remaining lines, and I can just process those separately. So having a look at the each statement line. So remember, I was saying that we don't have a split screen mode where you would need to be ticking any boxes. The system has done the step for you automatically. So this column select has a yes in case the matching was successful. We have a couple of matching logic automatically built in. So in my first two lines, this logic just worked perfectly based on the fact that I have a customer in NetSuite called Vodafone. The bank statement has a counterparty mentioned called Vodafone Netherlands. The customer was instructed to put the invoice number in the payment reference. So the description tells me that there is an open invoice inside NetSuite. And in fact, the payment that has been made to my account is the exact amount as is open in NetSuite. So for the tool, this is a very straightforward transaction. So if you would like to always see the reason for matching, you can always scroll down to the right, and here you see the list of matching reasons. The matching reason here is open transactions based on parameter. One of them was the description, the other one was the perfect amount. So there are several layers of matching reasons you can select. The second scenario is even better because this time the customer is paying me a lump sum. So if you look at this amount, this is a sum of two payments that belong to two individual invoices. If you would like to maybe double check if that's indeed the correct one and perhaps the customer didn't give you the exact reference, you can always open this pop-up next to any entity. And by an entity, I would mean a customer name, vendor name, employee. And opening up the pop-up gives me more transactional level of what do I still have open. So any type of open invoice, credit memo, sales order that would be available. So in this case, on my list, you will see that the match happened perfectly. There's no question about it, but perhaps I decided that this payment was supposed to be a partial payment. So let me just show you really quick how to distribute that 3,000 euros onto two different transactions. And the tool will immediately tell you what is the exactly percentage paid. So what happens in this scenario is that we create a customer payment for this invoice and we close it as marked paid in full. These two will still keep open. So these are just partial payments that are allocated. But the user is doing all this from the screen of bank reconciliation. The line number 3 is actually a very similar scenario like the previous two, but this time you will see that the match wasn't successful. And for me to investigate why the match wasn't done automatically is simply to go into the pop-up and realize that the payment that has been made is a sort of underpayment. So on the bank statement itself, you noticed it was 2,999 being paid. The description holds the number of the invoice, that's okay. But I'm missing here €1. So in order to achieve, the posting of this particular underpayment, I have decided to create a payment different reason for it, because I see that it happens every now and then. The typical reasons for those underpayments could be, bank charges, could be a sort of exchange rate difference, could be that, there's a certain tax being applied. So in this case, I'm going to select my payment different reason for bank charges. And on that payment different reason, I selected a specific expense account for the posting. I want the tool to handle this difference for me automatically without me having to create it separately. So when I save this statement, you will see 2 transactions, and we can double check the journal entry and how it looks. So on line number 4, now we are moving more to the debit side. So these were all credits coming from the customer, incoming payments. So this time it's a debit. So very similar scenario. This time I made a payment from my account. So since I put the right description and I pay the exact amount as my vendor bill, the matching is the same logic based on the parameters. In this case, we take this vendor bill, which is currently in open status, and we will mark it as paid in full and reconcile. As for the debit side, some of you may not be using this logic of payments one-on-one, but you are generating what NetSuite calls the payment bill runs, or the electronic batches. If you do so, we can help you with reconciliation of the whole batch, not just the individual transactions. Again, 2 identifiers that can help you realize this is a batch is usually that the bank is going to receive the bill number, the bill batch number, the same one. The other identifier could be the reference that you used when you were generating the file. In this case, I need to scroll down to the right to show you alternative matching type. So it's not linking to one transaction, it's linking to the whole batch, which includes all the bills in it. And by showing or displaying this electronic payments batch list, I will be able to identify it by the description and the total amount from the list. In this case, it's good to mention that some of our NetSuite customers, they are using the in-transit functionality, meaning that for the time being, when the bill is generated, the payments would go, it would be marked as in transit. They wouldn't be posted immediately. In this case, we help with the reconciliation. So all the invoices are then marked as paid in full. Other customers, they would immediately post all transactions that are generated from the batch. In this case, we take care of the reconciliation of already posted bill payments. So I'm slowly moving to more the exceptional side, or how to handle certain lines that have not been automatically reconciled. So the line number 6, in this case, let me make this even more interesting by not providing the additional details from NetSuite. So you notice this part was the information we had from NetSuite side, and this information was coming from the bank. In this case, the counterparty on the statement mentioned is actually no known vendor to me. I don't have Hilton as a vendor. If I don't have the entity to link to, I can also associate it with a transaction. So how I would handle this is by a journal entry. And in this case, in the select account column, I can just open the list of all the accounts, or if I know the account which I would like to use for posting, I would select it. From within the screen, if you needed to associate or maybe trim more this type of journal entry, you can assign a department or class or location, depending on your preference. So the defined characters of this journal entry is defined from within the screen. The line number 7 is a very similar scenario. Actually, it's the identical scenario, but you will notice that the account is already pre-selected and the tool knows what to do. Well, the key difference here is for this line, I had no rule applicable. And for this line, I have what we call custom matching rule. The custom matching rule can be created on the fly. So I may have decided that for the Hilton example, I needed a rule because I know that this type of charges occur regularly. If it's a one-off thing, then you can simply solve it by choosing the account. Let me show you a detail of this custom matching rule. And by the way, the tool allows you to create as many rules as you like. You can have different type of rules for credits. You can have different types of rules for debits. You can also apply them to different bank accounts separately. So on this list of bank custom matching rules, the decisions that you have to make is, how do we identify the rule applies? So in this case, the rule applied because the line level information included the word meal. The other identifier could have been that the counterparty is specific. So here I'm thinking of some regular charges like Google advertisement, Facebook, LinkedIn general fees. Things like this could be automated. In case you would tell us that there is no existing vendor bill that you would be that the tool has to match against. The second part of this equation is then, okay, if we found this, so what then? And then you select a specific GL account for posting if you wish to have a journal entry created. If you would tell me that that particular charge has to be linked to an entity, so in case it is a sort of credit coming from customer, you wish to have a deposit, then you would select the name of a customer. In case it's a sort of prepayment you made, you will then select the name of the vendor, and we take care of the posting as a vendor credit and a check. So the rules can be created from within the screen. So next to this bubble, I also have the plus button. So I can just create it simply, or you can have them created beforehand and they automatically apply, like in my case. So far we spoke about the scenarios that were very easy to solve, and then we can have a look at some other scenarios, like in case of line number 9. It is a mix of the previously mentioned scenarios, because in this case I know who is the counterparty that is matching. However, the description is not really helping. And the amount, soon we will realize the amount is actually not the perfect match for any transaction we currently have open. In this case, again, I'm going to use my pop-up functionality to deep dive into what is possible to link against. And the linkage did not happen automatically because of the mismatch on amount. So one way of solving this could be a sort of payment different reasons, like a deposit, for example. So it's an overpayment for a particular invoice like this. In this case, you want us to create a customer payment for this specific invoice, and you also want us to store a sort of deposit as a journal entry. The other option might have been that you wish to, or the customer wished to send you a prepayment sort of for a particular sales order that wasn't billed yet. So it has no impact as of now. So you see it's just 15% prepaid. In this case, we create a deposit and link it directly to that sales order. The third option I might have had is that I will not select any of these transactions from the list because I'm yet awaiting my team to create such a sales order invoice. So I can opt to have reconciliation done as an undeployed deposit. In this case, we can link it to a particular transaction. So when I select it from the list, you will see the change has happened. So now the sales order is associated and the tool knows what to do. It will create a deposit for you linked to Vodafone, and that is linked to your sales order. On the line number 10, it's the only line that is linked against the closed matching logic. So you remember telling me the story at the beginning where standard NetSuite would need transaction to be existing in order for you to link it. So in this case, we already had a customer deposit with the same amount in the system. And based on the parameters, based on the matching logic, we were able to link it and we will reconcile it in this case. So again, going to the right side, you will see that this logic is closed transactions based on amount. That's the only one from the list. So I'm going to now save the statement because this, remember, this is just a review. I have now made some choice and I have just double checked that everything was matched as expected. But now I need to do the step of saving the statement. And before I do so, I just want to prove my point when I was saying that we work with the open logic. So I'm just going to open a random invoice and show you that the status of that invoice is open. And after I save the statement, I would like to see the change. I would like it to be marked as paid in full and also being reconciled. Just going to close this and let the system run the bank reconciliation for me. Here is my invoice in the open status without no customer payment there. Good news is if you are experiencing high volume of transactions and you would need to do thousands and thousands of lines a day, you don't actually need to wait for this page to load in order to review it. You can also, you will be notified once the bank statement has been processed. All the statements that have been processed previously can be then found on a list of statements. This is where I will be able to review later on if I have any, all the transactions posted. We will give it a moment to load. And then we can review line by line the transactions. All right, so this is the review. And you will see the direct link. This leads me, by the way, to a customer payment for this particular invoice of Vodafone. So here I open the invoice. If I now reload the page, what I would like to see is the change in status, paid in full. And this is the payment record that we deposited to the same name. You will always know we did that through bank reconciliation because of this field. So now everything in NetSuite is interlinked, my customer invoice, my customer payment, and the bank reconciliation statement. And you see it has been applied to that particular invoice on the list. We can have a look at the other example where we did the partial payment. So you remember I was distributing the 3,000 euros onto other transactions. So here is the amounts that have been actually paid. And you will see that only one of the transactions was paid in full. The remaining one will be still open because there is only a partial payment of 50%. This hasn't been closed up yet. We can have a look at my journal entry that I promised to show you. So remember, we had an underpayment of €1. And I selected on the line in the pop-up that I wish to have that €1 posted as a journal entry separately to a generated or design expense account. In this case, the type is a journal entry, link to the bank statement, and here is the selected account that I did on the rule. We can have a look at that bill, the supplier invoice that I had for Staples, which was working with the same logic. So the bill payment is a record we created through reconciliation. Here is a link to the statement. And this particular bill was in an open status the moment we started the process, and now it will be marked as paid in full. So a lot of transactions, is happening automatically without you having to do these steps yourself. The last I would like to pay attention to is the deposit. So that was the transaction where I linked it to a particular sales order, as you remember. We can now have a look at how that customer deposit looks like. Here's my customer Vodafone, and here is the link to the sales order, which yet is to be applied by the time we will be billing our sales order here. Perfect. So there's one nice report you can run. if that's interesting for you, it's included in the bundle. It's a reconciliation report. And that reconciliation report can show you any outstanding credits or debits that have not yet been reconciled. Remember, I finished my statement in full, but just to show you a very basic overview, these are all the reconciled credits. And you can go into more details in here as well. And if any outstanding credits or debits would be included, you can also double check that from the screen. This report can be exported and it can be used later in for reporting purposes internally. In the last few minutes, I would like to talk about the setup itself. So how do we achieve this process to be working seamlessly and be automated? So since we are not using the standard NetSuite features, we need a specific configuration done from a fast4 bankrec setup. So in the setup page here with the bundle comes the whole new section for bankrec setup. And on this very page, I can have, as I mentioned, multiple accounts. I can have some euro accounts, US dollar accounts. You will notice that I have also my payment providers on the list. I also have my credit card providers. The key difference between having a reconciliation done for PayPal is that here the logic of invoice numbers will not work. You hardly ever will find the exact invoice number that you have in NetSuite as well. Most probably, this will be some sort of additional reference number. So a PSP reference number that would serve as an additional parameter. So in our tool, it's good to know that you can add, and I'm scrolling down here, you can add additional parameters. In this case, very commonly used PSP reference, which can be included on maybe sales order record in NetSuite, maybe it's a field on your invoice form in NetSuite. And the same PSP reference for the payment we would expect in the statement from PayPal. So additional matching parameters can be done. Also, the bank statement overview you saw me doing could have had additional columns. So one example of an additional column that our customers often use is having the option, and I will just scroll down to the right, is having the option to attach a file. So for example, if I create a journal entry, I wish to also attach an additional file, backing up the costs. The pop-up functionality that I was displaying to you also has the option to add additional columns. So again, a good example of that would be additional maybe internal number that helps you with the reconciliation. So if the reconciliation did not happen automatically because of lack of details in the payment, in the statement, you can also help yourself by adding those internal numbers. On the configuration page, which is, by the way, the action that you need to do just once, which is at the very beginning, you need to decide a couple of points. First of all, it is about the bank file format, and then the matching logic. So I'm just going to really quickly show you the matching logic I use for my imports today. In here. So this is the matching preferences that I selected. You can have different matching logic for your credit side. You can have different matching logic for your debit side as well. If you wish to automate the payment different reasons and you could agree internally on some sort of threshold, you can also put a percentage here, and certain percentage of all underpayments will be always auto-posted without you having to select the reason manually. Perfect. So from NetSuite side, this would be it. I will stop sharing and I will just come back quickly to my presentation and talk about a couple of points with regards to the implementation, and then we can have a look at some of the questions from the Q&A. So the implementation of the SuiteApp actually takes between 4 to 6 weeks. It is not that the setup would take that long. It's the testing phase we would strongly suggest every customer to take in order to see all the benefits, set up all the custom matching rules, payment different reasons, and all the varieties of how the SuiteApp can help them. So the actual need of sessions is divided into 3 sessions. So first one is a walkthrough of the configuration. We do the setup primarily in the sandbox first. The second session would be to discuss any test results that you as a customer you had, and we can discuss advanced functionalities like those alternative matching types, things that I haven't had chance to talk about, like multi-line journey entry and so on. The third session is typically to close up and to find if we have covered everything, any remaining questions, and then you are basically going live with your application in the production environment. As for the pricing, so the pricing structure of the SuiteApp is basically an annual fee for the number of accounts. So one license would be 10 bank accounts or credit card accounts, payment providers accounts that you need to reconcile. And then there is a one-off fee, so you pay that only at the beginning for the overall implementation. So that covers the consulting hours on our end. So now I have a couple of minutes to look at some interesting questions from the chat. Perfect. So I'm seeing here 3 open questions. And you would like me to show example with a customer deposit. So Daria, my customer deposit example, there was this logic of open or closed. You remember I had 2 examples on the list. One was that I asked the system to link it to a sales order, so not yet a posting transaction. That was the Vodafone example. Maybe I can share my screen again to show you. The other example was that I already had a deposit in the system and the linkage happened based on the closed logic. So that was the example with Heineken. What you could have done is to set up a rule. So anytime you would like the system to create a customer deposit automatically for you, you set that custom matching rule. So if I show you once again how that looked like, to close this. Custom matching rule. Customer deposit. The value this time could be the customer itself. So what would be a typical fast forward would be your customer. And here you select us from the list. And in this case, you automate the process of us creating customer deposit. This would, of course, if we had a vendor bill or customer invoice, this would take a precedence. But in this case, you can automate the process in case there is no match against any particular transaction. If you needed this customer deposit to be linked to a particular department automatically, you can also select it here. And perhaps the location will be, let's go with Amsterdam. This is a way how to automate the customer deposits. Is there a maximum amount of lines that can be imported? So Suzanne, we have customers that use the tool for high amounts. I would always strongly suggest to use that the split of the file. So what I showed you on the main page here is that you can import multiple import records. And here you can also set up a configuration that would split that large file, which is maybe 3,000 lines, and it would split it by values like 500 or 300. So ease you the job of the reconciliation and reviewing. This is done again from the setup. So on my, apologies, I need to move the screen. The bank reconciliation setup has this multiple statement configuration option. And here I have one that is for PayPal large statements, because when we were testing it, we also wanted the tool to be splitting the transactions. In this case, it was a test by 10, but we could use it for 500 lines. In this case, when you import the statement, you will see 3 different links, which leads you to 3 different pages, each cut down by 500. Andrew is asking if the date has to be the exact match. So there is a certain window you can set. It doesn't have to be a transaction from the same day. You can set a certain window within which you can, we can be performing the match. So it can be 30-day post or 30 days prior to your statement. That's 30 days, just an example, could be any days that you want. Perfect. So I believe we have answered all or majority of our questions. So I would like to quickly wrap up the webinar. And I would like to invite you for the next one. So next time we are going to talk about Scan and Capture, which is our SuiteApp for automating AP processes. So how to natively use OCR for bringing invoices to NetSuite. And one more to talk about credit card import. So for those of you who are dealing with high volume of credit card statements and you need an automated way of processing, welcome. We would like to welcome you to the webinar. Should you have any questions, any additional questions for me, here is my email address, so feel free to let me know. We will put all the Q&A questions you posted in an email, and we will follow up with all the participants post the call. So thank you so much for your attention today. I wish to see you in our next upcoming webinar, and have a nice day, everyone.